Alright, today I'm going to be going over the deck that I used to make it into both Diamond 1 and to the max duelist level of the 2023 World Championship Qualifiers. If you're wondering how Crystal Beast can keep up in a Tier 0 Tier 11 format, the answer does mostly come from having good access to things like these field spells and being able to play around things like Dim Shifter, but it doesn't always come down to that. So let's go through all the cards and talk about how they're used. First of all, 3 Maxx C because you have to. But then we got the Crystal Beast names. So we're running 1 Ruby, mostly because you're probably only ever going to resolve its effect once through either the Crystal Conclave effect or special summon it with Awakening the Crystal Ultimates. We've got 1 Eagle so that we can play around Tikaboo, and also just so that we have another name to search with things like Crystal Bond and Zenith. You don't want to run out of Pegasus too quickly, especially if you're under something like Dim Shifter or Necrovalley. Having the Eagle Engraver getting banished is a lot better than one of the Pegasus. Then obviously 3 Pegasus because it's the most important card. It gives you access to all your rank 4s along with, because of Zenith, by far your best normal summon in the deck. Then we're running 1 Noble Knight's Shield Bearer. I think I'll just come back to this when we get to a different card. We got Double Dimension Shifter just because it's so good against Tier, and we can definitely last a turn without even sending anything to the graveyard. But if we do, it's all going to be spells anyway, so nothing that really matters is getting banished from us. Then we've got Radian, a Kaiju. And Kaijus have some really interesting synergy with Crystal Beast because you have a lot of cards that can bounce things, like you have Conclave, and also the most common bounce is from Rainbow Bridge of the Heart. So when you bounce a Kaiju, it just goes back in your hand, and then you contribute over another monster for free. We're also using Radian because it's dark, and it makes it a lot easier to summon things like Starving Venom and Dragostapelia. It's also not too big, so we can still hit over it with things like Zenith, and the lowest attack on Kaiju being 22 is still too high for things like Guska to hit over or anything in our rank 4 engine anyway, so it doesn't really matter in that regard. We're not missing any benchmarks. Then we've got 2 Zenith. One of them is pretty much always going to be banished by its own effect unless we hard draw Rainbow Dragon the first turn, but that's okay because you can still hit lethal pretty easily with just 1. Its effect to special out another Crystal Beast gives you like an instant rank 4 when you normal summon Pegasus, place Zenith effect, Special Eagle, and it also has its Battle Trick effect that can just jump scare people for lethal. And we're only running 1 Rainbow Dragon because as annoying as it is to brick on this in your opening hand, and not being able to activate Zenith's effect, it's even more annoying to brick on 2 of them at the same time. And it's not like the hardest brick because it also turns Awakening online, so if you brick on both of these, it's no longer a brick because it turns Awakening the Crystal Ultimates online. And we can only run 1 Foolish Burial Goods thanks to Tier. Ideally, we would be able to run 3 of these so that we can send Salvation so that we have a more consistent way of accessing Necrovalley and Zombie World, but we're making do with just the 1. Then we've got 3 Rainbow Bridge. You'd probably run 20 of this card if they would let you, but you can't, so it searches literally everything except for Rainbow Bridge of the Heart. But it does search a card that searches that card, so like, does it really matter? 2 Crystal Bond, and this is why we're running 1 of the Noble Knight Shield Bearer, because Crystal Bond is really good. It adds a Pegasus to your hand and places a Zenith, but if it gets ashed, you can't search a second one and use it again. It's a once per turn, and you also have to have 2 different names in deck. So if you run out of Eagle, Zenith, Ruby, you can't just search 2 Pegasus. Which is why, in my opinion, I think Noble Knight Shield Bearer makes it a little more flexible than a 3rd Bond, because while it only adds you 1 Pegasus, it is a lot less impactful to ash, and say your Crystal Bond does get ashed, you still have access to a Pegasus. And for those that don't know, you can banish this card from your hand to add a level 6 or lower winged beast monster, and that's correct. Pegasus is a beast, not a winged beast. Don't let the art fool you. This is the only winged beast, Crystal Beast. And then we're running 2 Triple Attack because in a Tier format especially, it's incredibly useful. Being able to steal a monster, being able to shuffle opponent's card back into hand, those are like unbelievably useful effects. I only use the draw 2 if I have literally nothing in my hand. like, and I need something. But otherwise, the other two effects are just like super good. We have Pot of Prosperity because our extra deck is useful, but not necessary, and we definitely don't need all of it. So it really helps us search for important consistency pieces like Bridge of the Heart, or Awakening, or Bond. Next up, we've got the two field spells. Necrovalley shuts down so many decks, as you'll see in the replays, like Tearlament, Adamantipator, or Earth, or whatever that deck is now. And then Zombie World is also really useful because it makes it harder for Tyr to play the game, but it also makes it impossible for Fluon to Reese to play the game unless they get like a Cyclone. Thanks to this last line of text of neither player can tribute summon monsters except for zombie monsters. That means that they can't even use like their continuous spell to tribute this card because the card in their hand isn't a zombie monster. Then comes one of the best cards in the deck, Rainbow Bridge of the Heart. It does literally everything. It gives you an extra normal summon. It lets you destroy one of your Crystal Beasts to search a crystal card. It lets you bounce a monster after your Crystal Beast is placed in the spell and trap zone. It also has the effect that bounces itself when it does that, which actually comes in handy against a few things, like the Tearlament field spell sometimes. If you're wanting to bounce a Rhino Heart and they have the field spell up, normally if you bounce it and goes back to the extra deck, the field spell will activate. But when you bounce it with this bounces back to your hand, and then now they can't destroy one of your best cards with the field spell. But as long as you can see this and any Crystal Beast, you have a play. Sometimes it's not the strongest play, but you will have a play. Like even Zenith you can destroy from the hand to search something like Crystal Bond. Then we've got two Super Poly, which is another added benefit of having Zombie World, because any two zombie monsters will make Dragon Necro. But Super Poly is just super useful. Because we have things like Ruby and Zenith as lights, you can Super Poly with things like Zeus and Exosisters, and because you have things like Eagle and Pegasus, you can fuse with things like Appaloosa and Baron. We also have Radian to add a Dark on their field, and just in general, the amount of times that you can summon Dragostapelia or Mudragon using just your opponent's monsters is incredibly high. Next, we have another one of the best cards in the deck, Awakening the Crystal Ultimates. This card is really good because it gives you access to either Rainbow Bridge of the Heart, or if you already have Bridge of the Heart, you can send Salvation to search a Pegasus or a Zenith and one of your field spells. And it also helps you push for lethal with its other effect of special summoning a Crystal Beast monster from literally anywhere but the Banish Zone. This plus Crystal Conclave are your two best ways of having recursion in this deck. And then we have our one Bridge of Salvation. You never want to see this in your hand, especially in this build of the decks. There are some decks that aim to discard it with things like Souls, or... I mean, we have Super Poly to discard for, and we're also running Dugaris just in case. But I find that it's almost never worth it. It's usually better to just go into something like Baguska, and then next turn you can attack with Baguska, send to the graveyard with Zeus. If you need to. But ideally you just never draw this card. And then we're running two of each of the traps. So we got two Crystal Miracle. It's an incredibly useful Omni Negate. Against Tyr, it's not quite as good just because they have so many effects that go up at the same time. It's really easy to chain block the important ones. And it also destroys and sends to the graveyard, so things like one of the effects being activated in hand, or something like Rhino Heart, it'll still activate the effect in the graveyard to either special summon itself or fusion summon from the graveyard. So it's a little bit more limited in use against Tyr, but it's so important against everything else, and it still has really good uses against Tyr. When you're trying to protect things like Baguska, like Necrovalley, it's good to target things like Heartbeat or Duster that may threaten like your board breakers. This is also incredibly important for things like Evenly Matched, which comes up a lot. And then we've got Conclave, which is, I know I'm saying this a lot, again, one of the best cards in the deck. This card having an effect to special out of the deck any Crystal Beast monster when a Crystal Beast monster you control is destroyed, combined with Rainbow Bridge of the Heart's effect to destroy any Crystal Beast monster you control to search a Crystal Spell or Trap, makes it really useful to activate this effect, send to back row, activate this effect, special summon Ruby, activate this effect to bounce, and then you have like at least 3 monsters and a bounce, all just from searching a card. And then the other effect of sending this card to the graveyard to bounce one of your Crystal Beasts and another card on the field is unbelievably useful. This card can be used both defensively on either like your opponent's monster or on their end phase to bounce a trap that they just set, or even to bounce your own cards so that you don't have to banish as many or sometimes even any cards from evenly matched, or to protect things like Necrovalley that they're trying to destroy by just bouncing it back to your hand. Or you can use it offensively, both by either bouncing something like your Zenith and your opponent's monster, and then swinging with something like a Pegasus, and then special summoning the Zenith again, or just bouncing your opponent's monster so that you have lethal. Now for the extra deck that we haven't talked about yet, we've got Dweller. Obviously just a very important card in tier format, but honestly, in best of one, I feel like it's almost always better to go for Pegasus first, just because it hits so many more decks. It hits Exosister, it hits Flu, it hits Earth decks, it hits tier. It's just really annoying for pretty much anything to deal with. Even like linked strategies can sometimes struggle to summon enough monsters on the board from purely hand effects alone to get rid of it. But if you know you're facing tier, then Dweller is really good to go into. And then we have Lightning Chidori as one of the better removal monsters that we have in this deck. Sending things back to the extra deck instead of destroying them and sending them to the graveyard is really good against tier, and it also forces activations on back row when you summon it out to bounce a set. Got Exxon Knight, honestly, he doesn't come up that much, but he's kind of like a battle phase-less Zeus. If you're able to get his effect off, it's really useful to just wipe the whole field, and then even then you could go battle phase and make Zeus from a 1 material this guy for 2 material Zeus. We've got Borbro and Chakanine just so that we have the option of making a format Zeus, but honestly I feel like it's never that good because especially in tier limit format, sending cards to the graveyard is dangerous. We've got Tornado Dragon just for a good back removal, and Dugaris mostly for the discard to draw effect. He's also got the battle phase effect that could be useful. Honestly, I almost never use him though. And our only 2 link monsters, we have Anaconda, just as a way of, if they somehow all they have on the field is like Exterio and no other interruptions, you have the chance of getting out like Pegasus, Zenith, Eagle to link summon for 2 and then activate Super Holly from deck to fuse away their Exterio without using any spell cards. And then similarly, Underworld Goddess, just to get rid of any towers that we can't deal with. Things like Blackwing. Now that we've gone through all the cards individually, let's look at some replays on how to practically use the deck. Alright, so this is pretty much the ideal Crystal Beast hand. I think it would be better to have Bridge of the Heart instead of Rainbow Bridge, so you could use Awakening to send Salvation instead of having to use it to search for Bridge of the Heart, but other than that, it's pretty much perfect. You have access to 2 Pegasus, you have access to Bridge of the Heart, you have both traps, so let's just watch and see how I set up the board. You pretty much always start with Bond, because it's a really enticing Ash target. You would rather this get ashed if you already have a Pegasus than your Zenith, because if Zenith gets ashed, then you don't have access to Awakening the Crystal Ultimates, which really hinders how you can end your board. So we don't get ashed here, we get to use the Zenith effect. We're going to summon out Eagle, just so that we can keep our last Pegasus in deck so that we can search it later. We get the bridge, summon out the Pegasus, and then here we use the effect to pop the Pegasus because we're going to summon the other Pegasus and bring the effects back from the graveyard. A late Maxx C, which is weird. I mean, it would have only saved them 1 card. Usually we just play through Maxx C anyway, like they're drawing 2 cards, it's not that big a deal. But yeah, with the Bridge of the Heart we got the other trap, and then we're saving the other Rainbow Bridge for next turn, just so that we can guaranteed have a play. So I'm going to try and get rid of our Baguska, but honestly Baguska is pretty important to stay here, so we're going to Miracle that. If they had more cards on the field, we would destroy the one on field so that we could bounce with Bridge of the Heart and activate Conclave. But they had nothing, so we just destroy the Pegasus down here so that next turn we can destroy our own Pegasus and then special summon with Conclave. Keeping Megusta seemed to be the right play. It stopped them from being able to combo off, and we hard drew the Foolish Burial Goods, so that's pretty nice. We get to send Salvation, activate Salvation effect, add Necrovalley and Zenith, right? Yep, because all of our Pegasus are out. And the stack can't deal with Necrovalley, so they just see that and scoop. But even if they didn't, we had so many good plays because we haven't used Awakening yet, so we could change Pegasus to attack and then use Bridge of the Heart effect to pop our Pegasus and then search Awakening, and then Conclave effect to search Ruby and Awakening effect to bounce the monster. And then we get Ruby effect to get the Pegasus back. And then we go battle phase and we can attack for 21, 18, 300, special out Zenith from hand, and then Awakening to summon out another Pegasus for game. So that game was already over. We didn't even need Necrovalley. All that really mattered is that Pegasus made them skip their turn. Alright, so this game, our hand is a little bit more suited to going second with the Super Poly and the Maxx C, but we did draw Bond, Bridge, Prosperity. So that's definitely enough to get us going, especially since Bond didn't get ashed. We can just go straight into Zenith, get our Eagle, and now here, do Prosperity. Now you could be thinking maybe you want to use the Bridge first to deck them a little more, but the thing is, Bridge can search so many cards that you'd almost rather Prosperity to see what you can get, just so that you know what you actually want to search with Bridge. Like if you hit an Awakening or Bridge of the Heart, then you don't really need to use the Rainbow Bridge to search Awakening. And we did, we hit both of them, but we're gonna grab the Bridge of the Heart because that's just a better choice. And then here, if you want to be really careful, honestly, like sometimes you should be, I make the conscious decision to not play around Havness. It's at 2, so like, I don't know, like you could, but like the plays that you can make not playing around Havness are just a little bit better than the ones that if you do play around it. So I would rather, instead of activating Bridge, search Awakening, Awakening Send Salvation, get Necrovalley immediately before summoning Pegasus, activating the effect. I just summon out Pegasus and we get punished. So they Havness us. We don't Maxx C for 1 because we just know that they're not going to mill anything. So truly not punished. Instead, we're just going to use the effect, Bridge of the Heart, to pop Pegasus, to search Awakening, like I said, Send Salvation, Salvation effect, get Necrovalley and the Pegasus, and this is kind of why I didn't want to do this first, because now I can use the second Pegasus, bring back from the graveyard the other Pegasus. If I didn't do that, then one of my Crystal Beasts would be stuck in the graveyard, which like is fine, but not ideal. So we get to end on pretty much our absolute ideal end board with just those 3 starter cards of Bagooska, Crystal Miracle, Sapphire Pegasus, Necrovalley, and Bridge of the Heart. The only thing that could maybe be better is if this Super Poly or this Maxx C was a Crystal Conclave. Although even then, you'd probably only really want the Poly to be a Conclave because you don't want to clog up your back row. You want to be able to place the Pegasus so that you can activate the Bridge of the Heart to bounce. And this is especially good because we know it's tier, and this is why we need the Miracle. We're gonna pop again. If they had more cards on field, we would pop the Monster Zone one, but because they have nothing, we just get rid of the one in the back row so that we can pop this one next turn. They're gonna special summon. I'm gonna Maxx C. And then they're just gonna normal summon, go into Gooska. Let me draw 2. And like, the Maxx C really didn't matter. Like, neither of these cards will change the outcome, because all I have to do is pop the Pegasus, search for Awakening, bounce their Bagooska. And now I really don't even need any of these cards to make another board state that they can't get through. Thanks to the Necrovalley and the Super Poly, there's really not much they can do unless they like Heartbeat. But we're just gonna attack with Bagooska, get out of Zenith, get him down to low life points, and then special summon Zeus. And between this interaction, I think that we'll be fine. And they think so too, so they just forfeit. Alright, and now I've showed off a few ideal end boards going first, so let's see how we do going second. And this is against tier. So our hand, right off the bat, it's actually pretty good. We've got Maxx C, we've got our Kaiju. they're just gonna normal Merly activate the Havness that they sent, and we're gonna Maxx C. You're probably thinking like, oh, going second Maxx C, that's like an easy win, of course, but they have Herald of Orange-Light, so Maxx C, not a factor. They bring out Kikalos. We're just going to fast forward because everyone knows the tier combo. They Dweller because they're afraid of the mirror. And seeing that Dweller is actually really annoying because we drew the one of Foolish Burial Goods. That means that our Salvation in the graveyard would be dead if we use it, so we just have to hold on to this for a turn. They've got the Rule Kalos, they've got Redoer, a very annoying board. They're just gonna Insta Dweller, steal our Eagle, not the worst. We're gonna Tribute over their Rule Kalos and they're gonna say, no thank you, I'd rather still have interaction, so they instantly go for their Redoer to get out Dragostapelia. And it gets them another Kikalos. Their Heartbeat adds back their Suliak, and we're just gonna, we realized that all they have for interaction is their Face Down and Dragostapelia, so we're just gonna really hope that they don't Dragostapelia this. They think it's a bait, and they don't, so we get out our other Pegasus, and from here, I realized that there's actually nothing that they can do to stop me from clearing their board, essentially. So we can take out the Rhino Heart, and then we can take out the Kikalos, and then we can beat over the Dweller. And now they're left with just two guys. And two guys are not an out for Baguska. So we're gonna make the skip your turn monster and hope that they do just that. Redoer comes back, but again, Baguska says no. And they just go through all the phases, not believing that there's nothing they can do, but there is nothing they can do. Baguska. Now this turn they don't have Dweller anymore, so we can send the Salvation. Activate Salvation. Get our Necrovalley. And now from here we can beat over their two. They forfeited, but it didn't really matter. We were going to destroy their only two good monsters on field. We have Necrovalley up, so they can't get back any of the cards in their graveyard. They can't fusion summon, essentially. We were going to get out Zeus. We had Crystal Beast for follow-up plays if we drew any of our Crystal Spell or Traps next turn. So yeah, thanks to the Kaiju, we were in a pretty good position. Even without being able to bounce it back to our hand, it still is just like unrespondable removal. So that's like amazing, especially against tier. This will probably be the last replay that we go over. If you want to see more Crystal Beast play, check out my streams. I've got all my VODs on my channel if you want to just skim through those. Stop by the lives, that'd be sick. But here we have an example of a hand that has two conflicting cards of Goods and Shifter. So you have to really just pick which one that you want to activate here. And in this situation, because I have Super Poly, I go with Goods. Because I'm okay with the Shifter becoming a dead card because I have a card that I need to discard something for anyway. And then here, because we don't have like super full combo, we just play around the Havness and activate Necrovalley first. Because we weren't going to get enough cards to pop a Pegasus, summon another one, bring it back in the back row. So we're just going to go for Baguska, set Super Poly, pass, so that we have follow-up for next turn with Rainbow Bridge and Triple Attack. But they do have the Heartbeat, so that's unfortunate for us. They have the Keldo and the Kelbeck. So really just like potential full combo here. We check our mills. They didn't hit anything super important. We checked their mills. They hit enough names to Poly for, and also to banish with Snow, apparently. Not really sure why they would want to do that. I guess maybe they're just trying to get a rank 4 or enough names to do something, so just have to see. They try and activate both effects, hopefully knowing that they're both going to get negated. They summon the last card in hand, which is Merly, and then they link all of us off for an Underworld Goddess, so I guess it makes sense that they wanted to Snow. if none of their rank 4s were going to do anything. Obviously, you can't super poly just one card, so you just have to tank it. But an upside is that we do have targeted removal. So the bridge lets us get Awakening, which lets us get Bridge the Heart. And then without committing a monster, not that it matters in this situation, but we can bounce the Goddess without even committing anything. So with no cards in hand, no cards on field, they decide that they just don't want to deal with that, especially after banishing 7 of their graveyard. So even with Bagooska and Necrovalley getting dealt with, it didn't really matter because they had to use way too many resources just to do that. In the end, a lot of our wins did come from Necrovalley and people just not having ways to deal with it, or Bagooska. But I think that the interaction that the Crystal Beast set up and their ability to play around it makes it really interesting and is pretty unique, actually. It's not just Floodgate Turbo, it's the ability to play within the Floodgates and also protect them. So hopefully you find this deck as interesting as I do. Shouts to Neshi. Without his channel, I wouldn't know how to play this deck or anything about it, and I would just continue to think that Crystal Beasts were just a meme deck. So if you're interested in like even more in-depth content on that, I'm gonna link his channel in the description below, so go check him out for sure. But yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you're interested in more content like this or seeing what other decks that I run, let me know. But until then, see ya.